We all know the story. Silicon Valley, built by brilliant college dropouts, working in garages, changing the world one line of code at a time. That's the version we were told. But what if I told you? The rise of big tech wasn't just about genius and innovation. What if, behind the scenes, there was another player, one that never wanted to be seen? Because the truth is, Silicon Valley didn't just grow on its own. It was nurtured, funded, and quietly guided by the most powerful intelligence agency in the world. And once you see the connections, you'll never look at tech the same way again. To understand the CIA's influence on Silicon Valley, we need to travel back to 1947. As the Cold War took shape, President Truman signed the National Security Act, creating the Central Intelligence Agency. Its mission was clear: gather intelligence to prevent another Pearl Harbor. But something else was happening that would change everything. The Soviets were gaining ground in a different kind of warfare: technological supremacy. When Sputnik launched in 1957, it sent shockwaves through the American intelligence community. The Soviets were ahead in space. What else might they be ahead in? For America's intelligence services, this wasn't just about national pride. It was an existential threat. If the Soviets won the technology race, they might win everything. The response was swift. In 1958, President Eisenhower established the Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, later renamed DARPA. But what few people realized was that alongside these public initiatives, the CIA was developing its own technological strategy, one that would operate in the shadows. And it would begin right here at Stanford University, in what would later become known as Silicon Valley. In the 1950s, Stanford University was facing a financial crisis. Its solution would inadvertently create the perfect conditions for what the CIA had in mind. Frederick Terman, Stanford's provost, had a bold idea: turn the university's unused land into an industrial park specifically for technology companies, with close ties to Stanford's engineering department. Terman's vision was revolutionary: a place where academic research and private industry could cross-pollinate. But what most people don't know is who was watching this experiment with intense interest. As Stanford Industrial Park grew, it attracted the attention of a unique CIA division few have ever heard of: the Office of Scientific Intelligence, the OSI. Established in 1949, the OSI had a mandate unlike any other intelligence division, not just to monitor scientific developments, but to actively accelerate technologies useful for intelligence gathering. And Stanford's experiment offered the perfect cover: a legitimate ecosystem where cutting-edge research could be funded, monitored, and quietly guided without raising suspicions. The genius of the approach was its indirect nature. Rather than developing technologies in-house where secrecy would limit innovation, the agency could fund private companies through front organizations, encouraging developments that served intelligence needs. But the CIA needed a mechanism to channel this funding without revealing its hand. The solution would come from an unexpected source. In the early 1960s, a new financial model was emerging in the Bay Area: venture capital. Small firms providing funding to risky but promising startups in exchange for equity. What most histories miss is how perfectly this model served intelligence community needs. When you look at the early venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, what's striking is how many had partners with backgrounds in intelligence or defense. At the time, nobody thought to ask why. One of these early venture capital pioneers was a firm called In-Q-Tel. But unlike other VC firms, In-Q-Tel had a single primary client: the Central Intelligence Agency. Established much later in 1999, In-Q-Tel wasn't the CIA's first venture into Silicon Valley funding. It was simply the moment when they finally acknowledged what they've been doing for decades. In-Q-Tel was essentially the CIA admitting what had been happening since the 1960s, that they had been seeding money into technologies that served intelligence purposes, from secure communications to data analysis. But the CIA's influence went far beyond mere funding. They were helping shape the very culture of Silicon Valley itself. As personal computing gave way to the internet age in the 1990s, something remarkable happened. The same technologies that had been developed with intelligence applications in mind were now being deployed for commercial purposes. The business models that emerged in Silicon Valley around the early 2000s, collecting vast amounts of user data, analyzing behavior patterns, tracking locations, these weren't just coincidentally useful for intelligence. They mirrored exactly what intelligence agencies had been developing for decades. Consider Google Earth, a program that lets anyone access satellite imagery of nearly anywhere on the planet. What most users don't know is that the technology behind it came from a company called Keyhole, which was funded by In-Q-Tel before Google acquired it in 2004. The beauty of this approach is that the public does the work for you. People voluntarily use these consumer technologies, inputting valuable data that can be accessed through legal channels when needed. But perhaps the most significant intelligence coup was yet to come, and it would arrive through a program with the innocuous name PRISM. Revealed by Edward Snowden in 2013, the PRISM program allowed the NSA and FBI to directly access the servers of major internet companies, including Google, Facebook, and Apple. What Snowden revealed wasn't just that surveillance was happening. It was the depth of cooperation between Silicon Valley giants and intelligence agencies. The wall between private technology and government intelligence had become remarkably permeable. But this raises a profound question. If intelligence agencies helped create Silicon Valley, did they also shape its moral compass? Silicon Valley's distinctive culture is often portrayed as inherently rebellious. Young entrepreneurs disrupting established industries, breaking rules, moving fast, and breaking things. Many histories trace this back to the counterculture movements of the 1960s, suggesting that Silicon Valley's ethos emerged from California's tradition of questioning authority. But there's another interpretation, one that's far less comfortable. The ethos of move fast and break things serves intelligence purposes perfectly. If you're developing technologies that might later be used for surveillance or national security, it's better if the developers themselves believe they're simply disrupting industries for profit or public good. Consider Facebook's early motto, move fast and break things. This philosophy encouraged rapid development without careful consideration of consequences, creating systems that gathered unprecedented amounts of personal data before society could establish proper safeguards. Was this merely the impetuousness of young entrepreneurs, or something that aligned perfectly with intelligence community interests? Most people who work in tech have no idea about these historical connections. They genuinely believe they're building tools to connect people or make information accessible. The genius of the system is that they don't need to know. This plausible deniability extends to the highest levels of these companies, where executives can truthfully claim they've never consciously colluded with intelligence agencies, even as their business models perfectly serve intelligence gathering purposes. The story of intelligence influence in Silicon Valley isn't just historical, it continues today, hiding in plain sight. In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital arm, maintains investments in dozens of companies working on technologies from facial recognition to data mining, artificial intelligence to social media analysis. When you look at where In-Q-Tel puts its money, you're essentially seeing a preview of next-generation surveillance capabilities. The difference is that now they're quite open about it. But InQtel represents only a fraction of intelligence community investment in Silicon Valley. Far larger sums flow through traditional venture capital firms with more subtle connections to defense and intelligence. Many major VC firms have partners with backgrounds in defense or intelligence. It's not a conspiracy. It's just that these individuals understand which technologies will have national security applications and therefore reliable government customers. This creates a subtle but powerful incentive structure. Technologies useful for surveillance or intelligence naturally attract more investment, while innovations focused on privacy or encryption may face headwinds. And this brings us to perhaps the most important question of all. The devices we carry, the apps we use, the platforms where we share our most intimate thoughts, all exist within an ecosystem partially shaped by intelligence community interests. This doesn't mean that every tech company is a CIA front, or that Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are conscious intelligence assets. The reality is far more nuanced and, in many ways, more profound. The intelligence community didn't need to control Silicon Valley. They simply needed to nudge it in directions that served their interests, providing initial funding for key technologies and helping establish business models that generated useful data. The question isn't whether these technologies should exist. It's whether we, as citizens, understand their origins well enough to make informed choices about how they should be governed. Today, as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology emerge as the next technological frontiers, the patterns established during the Cold War continue. The same intelligence agencies are investing in the same ways, shaping tomorrow's world just as they shape today's. The true power of this system lies not in its secrecy, but in its invisibility. Not in hiding the connections, but in making them seem natural, inevitable, and beyond question. The next time you use your smartphone, post on social media, or marvel at a technological breakthrough, remember, you're not just participating in a technological revolution. You're taking part in one of the most successful intelligence operations in history.